Hey guys, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro Destin DeMarion here to talk about some more bass fishing 101 basics. So we're going to talk today about bait cast reels and spinning reels. We're going to talk a little bit about the differences, what situations you would fish either one, because they both have their place for sure. So why don't we start with our bait cast reel. So as you can see, it's a little bit different than the spinning reel. Right here we've got a handle with it's like a handle with two knobs on it. This is where you're going to reel. This is your drag. So this is called a star drag right here. This is going to adjust the tension of your line, so whether it can come out off the spool or not. So if you tighten this down a lot, it won't be able to pull off when the spool is engaged. But if it's really loose, you can just pull the line off of the reel when it is engaged. And most of the time I have my drag cranked down fairly tight because there's very few situations where I want it to be able to come off the reel easily. But that is what your drag is for. And then you've got your spool tension knob right here, your cast control knob. And this is going to adjust the tension on the spool. It's going to let you basically put a lot of tension on it, or in a sense have it in free spool, which is just going to allow the spool to spin freely when you cast. And a lot of people have hang-ups with bait casters, especially when they're just starting out. It's a little bit harder to get the grasp, but usually they're going to be the most versatile reel you're going to own. They're good for so many different applications. They're a lot more powerful than the spinning reel. So it's something that you definitely want to use if you're going to get into bass fishing. So if the spool is engaged, this is the thumb bar. This is how you disengage the spool. So now it's free spool. I'm using my thumb to slow it down so it doesn't backlash. If you've ever seen a backlash, it's where it's a big bird's nest and it's all, I'm sure you've seen memes about it, where there's just somebody complaining about a backlash. But so right now it's on a free spool. So you'll hear when I turn the handle, just engage. So now it is tight. The spool is engaged. So with that cast control, I'm going to use my thumb here. If I cast it out there, I want to slow the spool just a little bit so it doesn't overrun. And that's where you can adjust your spool tension. When you're just starting out, I would probably put the tension as high as you can possibly go and then just slowly back off from there. That's a good way to learn. That's how I learn, and that's pretty much how most people learn. Most of the time, mine's almost on free spool, and that's just so I can get further casts and skips and stuff. But you really have to be able to thumb the reel. That's the key. You do everything with your thumb here. It slows the spool down. It does pretty much everything you need to do when it is on free spool. And the other setting you have here is your magnetic brakes. And this also will stop your cast at the end. If you have your brakes real high, it's not going to be able to cast as far either. It's going to slow it down like real fast. If you have completely open, it's going to be a free spool situation as well. So that's another thing you can dial in. If you're starting out, once again, I would have it pretty high just as you're starting, and then you can dial it back. So here's the side plate. So I just hit the thing, it says open. So it's going to allow that spool or that thing to come off. And here you can adjust your brakes even more inside of the reel as well. So if you adjust like you want to do it, so you adjust the ones right across from each other so it's balanced if you would engage any of these brakes. Most of the time I barely have them on, but when you're starting out, it wouldn't hurt to have them on. Let me lock it back in. But that's the basic functions of your bait cast reel. It's got a lot of winching power. That is the major plus in it. You're going to use this for a lot heavier baits. You can throw really big baits on some of these reels, and it's going to be able to winch big fish out of heavy cover, utilizing very strong drags. So that's where these things are going to come in handy. You can make really long casts. There's a lot of benefits to using a bait cast reel. Now let's talk a little bit about the spinning reel. So here's our spinning reel. So obviously it looks a lot different than a bait cast reel, and it serves basically a different purpose. Most of the time when I'm using a spinning reel, I'm using it for lighter line applications in bass fishing. Now, there is some applications in saltwater and such where they use spinning reels for heavier duty stuff, but even then, most of the times we're using a baitcaster because of the winching power. So with this, I'm using it mostly for finesse applications. So with a spinning reel on the front here, this is your drag. As with the baitcaster, you have a star drag. This is your drag adjustment. So I'm turning it to the right. It's tightening that tension on the spool, and I will show you kind of how it works. So I just tightened it more. It's barely coming off the reel. I'm pulling it because it's closed. You can hear it click. If I loosen it a lot, it comes off the reel very easily. And either one of those are going to be useful in certain situations. When you're just starting out, I mean, I would have it somewhere in the middle because you don't want it too tight. You're going to break your line too much if you don't know how to adjust it on the fly. And if you have it too loose, you're going to not be able to get enough tension to set the hook and catch fish. So that's how I would adjust the drag in that situation. So we've got the drag, and this is your bail. This is what is going to allow the line to come off. So right now it's closed, and now it's open. This is how you cast. So you've got your rod, you hold the reel like that. You're going to use your pointer finger like that to hold the line. And when you cast, once it comes to where you want to cast it and it's pointing towards where you're casting, you're going to let this line go. Right when it gets to that point, and it's going to go off your spool right in the direction that you should have pointed it. So that's how you do that. And then once it gets down to wherever and it's sinking or floating or whatever, then you're going to close the bail. And then you can reel back in or jig it or do whatever you need to do. So here's your handle. It's usually only one knob on it, as opposed to baitcasters generally have two. And spinning reel's pretty simple. I mean, that's it. This is your spool right here. You can take them off. You can have a lot of reels come with two spools, so you can spool up two different lines and have one just in case. And all you need to do is unscrew the drag, pull off spool, pull out another one, or if you get a tangle underneath, you can unscrew the drag, and then you can untangle it underneath too. So that's basically how you use a spinning reel. Great way for somebody just starting out to learn. That's what I learned on, was a spinning reel. And I honestly didn't know how to use a baitcaster until I was like 20 years old. So this is something I'm really, really comfortable with. I'm really comfortable with a baitcaster now as well, but this is what I grew up with from the get-go. So this is a really good way to learn. This is a good way to, take a kid fishing. Spinning reels are a great way to do that. So with a spinning reel, like I said, you're going to use a lot of finesse presentations, light line. I usually run a braided line to a fluorocarbon leader. And the reason I do that is because you can cast a lot farther with that main line being braid. I'm going to use a light braid, generally 10 pound. But I will go heavier in some situations if I'm fishing heavier cover. But then I want to tie it a mainline fluorocarbon leader so it's more invisible, more finessey, gives it a more natural presentation. But it also gives you a lot of sensitivity because braid has no stretch. You can't stretch it. Fluorocarbon has a little bit. So with that braid though, you're getting a lot more feel, a lot more sensitivity, which is great for these finesse presentations. So guys, those are a little bit of the differences in the pros and cons to baitcasters and spinning reels. Hope you guys learned something. If you have any comments or you have any questions about it that I can elaborate on, feel free to comment below. You can look me up on social media if you don't feel comfortable, but keep checking back. We're going to be coming out with a lot more content soon. Thanks for watching.